welcome to all our listeners here. I'm calling in from Stockholm, and I am very excited to be today here with my guest, Lorien Holiday. Lorien Holiday is a leadership consultant and a mindfulness teacher. And alongside working with us as a team of Conscious Together experts, Lorien is a creative and energetic powerhouse of solutions for enhancing mental health and well-being in the personal and corporate space, and has experience supporting large financial and retail institutions and the UK's NHS by giving input and talks in that space. He's an experienced mental health and well-being therapist and an advocate of mental health. He's done this for the last 5 years or so, that he's developed his skills in providing businesses and individuals with simple, practical, and effective tools to enhance their felt sense of experience, both within professional and private elements of their lives. As well as sharing these simple solutions on a variety of social media platforms, he writes blogs and articles on well-being and well-being solutions, and his work has been used in NHS and the National Hypnotherapy Society publications. Always looking to enhance his experience and value in this field, Lorien is continually expanding his professional development, devouring quality textbooks and journals in this space, which I love, and with the latest from leaders in psychology and neuroscientific research. He has supported well-being initiatives in the NHS, including work within the extremely emotionally pressured environments of maternity functions and end-of-life hospice care. He has also supported well-being programs in the financial services sector, an environment he has extensive professional experience in. Before moving into this space, he has spent 20 years in the financial services sector, including 12 years at JP Morgan, performing various leadership and program management roles within their worldwide securities service division, including client management, new business, and fiduciary positions. So bringing to you, everyone, Lorien Holiday. We're extremely honored to have him on this show. It's our first show, and I think what better way to begin than this? So Lorien, thank you so much for being part of this. Very excited to learn more about you.
Thank you very much, Avanti. Yeah, it's lovely to be here, and thank you for being the first, for me, for being the first guest, choosing me as the first guest. That's lovely, and it's always amazing to hear your bio read back, and it's amazing how it sort of triggers imposter syndrome and things like that. And you think, wow, that actually sounds really good. But then you think, is that really me that they're talking about? And so it's a really interesting point of reflection to start this. I don't think I've ever had it read back to me quite like that. And so it's, no, it's lovely. And it's really nice to be here. And I'm very much looking forward to our conversation and unpacking some hopefully helpful stuff for our listeners.
We can't wait to start working on this. So Lorien, I mean, I think the best way to learn about you would be where you are at today, which means that you have a company that you've set up called Lorien Holiday. I've been through the website. It's an amazing site, gives you all the information you're looking for. But tell us how you brought this company together. I mean, what pushed you to express yourself, to bring your ideas in the form of a company?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was, I mean, it was a process of development and evolution is the honest answer. I didn't sort of wake up with a complete vision. And I think there's a sort of a false expectation we put on ourselves to do that. And I certainly had that. I kind of, you think, well, yeah, I need to know everything. I need to be in a solid position. I need to understand my client. I need to understand my product. I need to, be ready to launch this perfect piece of everything, this perfect sort of business, coherent, cohesive business. And that's all very true and important to a point. And it's certainly what an established business should be working towards. But I think for people starting on the journey, they need to be a lot kinder to themselves and a lot more patient with the process. In terms of me getting here, I spent 20 years in financial services, and I was, perfectly successful enough, but I was deeply unhappy. And the prospect of continuing to fulfill jobs there, roles there, successfully enough, and being compensated, perfectly agreeably for my efforts, I had no complaints there. But it was not fulfilling me. It was leaving me feeling very empty, very despondent, and really not relishing going to work, and not relishing doing the job, certainly for another possibly 30 years on the journey towards possible retirement. So I started racking my brains and thinking, what could I do instead? I was approaching 40, and I thought, if I don't try now, it might be, too late, because I didn't want to burn any bridges. And I thought, well, if this doesn't work out, I might need to go back. So I was also thinking, if I leave it too much longer, again, the sort of the age prejudice when you're entering certain organizations or returning to certain organizations can make things more challenging. So I kind of found myself in this window of realization and pressure, I suppose, and thinking, this is where I am now with my life, and it's successful enough by all the virtues of the boxes you tick. I was married happily, I had a house that was perfectly agreeable, I had a perfectly good job, all the things that you're brought up to believe that you need to tick in order to be a happy and productive member of society. But it wasn't meeting my expectations, and something was missing. And so I sort of took the plunge, and I thought, well, what can I do that I would enjoy doing, that wouldn't create too much risk. I was being a financial person, I'm risk adverse, which is an odd thing for a solo business person to be talking about. But I wanted to try something that wouldn't jeopardize the financial security my wife and I had enjoyed, and put too much pressure on her as I sort of explored a new industry and gave up the stable income that we'd been enjoying. So I actually trained as a personal trainer. And that was something I was very interested in, my fitness at the time, and I still am interested in fitness and what that does for you. And so I trained as that and stepped out in the world. I engineered my redundancy, which took some time, and I started doing that. And that was my first step into well-being and the well-being space. And I imagined that I would be working with corporate people and helping them get ready for their weddings and for their summer holidays and things like that. And actually, nothing could be further from the truth. I ended up working with a local physiotherapy company, and they were looking for people who could do sensible exercise for some of their clients. So these were people who were largely much older in life, so people in their 80s typically, or people who had suffered sort of neurological conditions such as Parkinson's or strokes, and they worked a lot in care homes, and so they had a number of clients with dementia and things like that. So I actually got brought into contact with a completely unexpected client base and a completely unexpected physical and actually emotional need. And what I discovered through my journey in that space, and that sort of was primarily my focus for about 2 years, was that there was a real psychological problem going on with a lot of these people. And part of that was because of the physical circumstances that they found themselves in. But it was trying, for me, it was trying to unlock why people are so resistant to exercise, why people are so uninvested in the vessel of their life experience, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a psychological question, or perhaps a spiritual or philosophical question, depending on your position, but it's certainly a psychological conundrum. And so I started exploring that space, and I got far more interested in mental health. That coincided with the pandemic, which actually effectively sort of paralyzed my business, and of all the things that I thought might cause my business to fail, it never contemplated the fact that I wouldn't be able to access my client base. Right. So that put an interesting pressure on me, like it did on everybody. And I took that opportunity to really refocus in the mental health space. And so I looked at practical, simple solutions for helping people with their mental landscape. And that led me to neurolinguistic programming. It led me to hypnotherapy. It led me to mindfulness, and a really sort of passionate interest and study into human psychology, behavioral psychology, evolutionary psychology, just really piecing together this landscape of our minds and our experience. And that's kind of what I've been doing ever since. And I've incorporated the two. And so I help people holistically, essentially, because you can't separate mind and body in the way that people think they can. And if you have an unhealthy body, it's very unlikely you'll have a super healthy mind, and vice versa. It's very unlikely that those things will be working well if you don't have that collaboration in place. Anyway, I'll pause and come up from there, because I've realized that I've just blasted a ton of information out there at you.
And I have my questions ready. I mean, this question the first one was meant to bring out what you had in there. I mean, it is a long story, and I think we did well. But I mean, the mind-body connection, and this is something I am planning to ask you more questions about, and we'll come back to that. But I found something very interesting in what you said, that knowing that exercise is good for you, sometimes we don't make these decisions. We don't invest time and effort in building routines around exercise. What, according to you, was the reason that people didn't exercise? Why did they make these poor choices?
I think there's there's a fundamental evolutionary driver for this, and I think that's one of the things that we really need to remind ourselves of compassionately, but also not let it get the better of us. We're kind of wired to want to conserve energy for the most part, right? So we spent, hundreds of thousands, millions of years of evolution without a ready surplus of food on a long-term basis, and having to work hard to get it. So we would have been very physically active, and we would have not had the guarantee of food, by and large, right? And we certainly wouldn't have had great surpluses of food, or most of us wouldn't have had great surpluses of food. So there's a huge pressure to move a lot and to eat as much as you could, which in any time before the last 50 years wouldn't have been a problem. But now we have a society, and has a lot of good things going for it, don't get me wrong, and this is important to note. I'm not suggesting that we should return to medieval times for the good of our health. I think there was a lot of problems there. There's a romanticism in certain circles about sort of like paleo diets and things like that, and this idea that you could, we could all go back and farm our own food and live off the land individually, and we'll all be better for it. And I'm not convinced that that's really the case. I think we've forgotten with some rose-tinted goggles how difficult it is to actually get food from the land if it's not on a sort of fairly well managed industrialized scale. So anyway, we are wired to take advantage of not wanting to work hard, right? There would have been precious little time to sit and rest, and so we would have really relished that and savored that, I'm sure. And so now we don't have to hunt for our food, and most of us don't have to work hard physical jobs. There's an increasing number of office jobs, et cetera, particularly here in the West. And there's a surplus of food, again, depending on where you are in the world. But if you're listening to this podcast, you are almost certainly in a part of the world where there is a surplus of food, and where you are likely to be in a fairly sedentary job. And so actually persuading ourselves, so we're kind of fighting our psychology in a sense to eat less and to exercise more, or to move more than we need to. So I think that's a really important thing to note. Now, it's important that we don't excuse ourselves. The other thing is that this sort of links in with sort of some of the work I think James Clear did in his sort of Atomic Habits. And it's the fact that we don't see the benefits of exercise in the moment. whereas we feel the benefits of eating a cake, right? Because we enjoy it, right? So we feel a moment of happiness. Whereas the exercise, all we feel, some people really enjoy exercise, and if you do, that's fantastic, right? Some people really do. I'm tragically not one of those people, so actually I don't enjoy exercise very much, but I know I've convinced myself, I've learned enough that I need to do it. So but actually, so you're doing exercise and you don't see the results. You don't instantly look the way you want to, whatever your goals are, right? Whether it's to, put on muscle, or whether it's to lose some body fat, or just to get fitter, whatever your goal is, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It takes consistent, repeated effort, and instilling those new habits and behaviors is hard work. It's hard work neurologically. It takes a lot of energy for the brain, and our body's conservative. That's a little bit of it, and yes, I could go on.
I've heard that, I blame my exercise routine, or sort of the lack of it, on the fact that we are in that survival mode and our bodies are constantly acting against us, doing anything that will be traumatic for the body, if that means going for long walks or anything. So I think we're wired, like you said, neurologically, to not go beyond our comfort zone. But I think if we do it in good size weekly capsules of time and energy, that should bring us a lot of benefits.
So yeah, definitely. And it's starting gently. It's not pushing yourself too hard too quickly. There's the temptation, like there is at sort of New Year's resolution times and things like that, to go sort of cold turkey on something. So you cut out all the alcohol, you stop eating all the junk food, you start running 5 miles a day, whatever it is. And within 2 weeks, you've destroyed yourself, right? You're miserable because you've cut back all the things you enjoyed. You've done far more exercise than your body can tolerate, and you hit a wall, and then you collapse. And that's why by the second week of January, most of our New Year's resolutions are out the window, because we go at it too aggressively. We don't plan it, basically, not properly, and we start too aggressively.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. I mean, I would like to now sort of move into the body-mind connection that you were speaking into, because I think that's a good leeway into our next couple of questions too. But I mean, from a body-mind connection, I know you speak about the 5 pillars. I mean, tell us a little bit about it, and show us your philosophy, if I can say that.
Yeah, sure. I suppose fundamentally is you can't neglect either one of them, right? We are a complete biological organism, and our brain is very easy to think, because we get so lost in our thoughts, because they're so mesmerizing, because we get lost in our own movie, that we tend to think that we, in quotes, are the pilots of this vehicle, and that we can do with it as we wish. And there's no real consequences. The mind controls it. And there's plenty of very prominent social media people who deliver that message, and they do well by that message. But I think a lot of people in a lot of contexts do themselves a lot of damage with a very aggressive application of that message, the neglect of the body, whether it's beating yourself to death with huge amounts of exercise, or whether it's any other extreme behavior that can have negative consequences, right? So you can exercise yourself too much, you can eat too much, you can eat too little, you can drink too much alcohol, you can take too many drugs, etc. There's all these things. Too much of anything is by definition a bad thing, right? We all have our crutches, I think is a useful analogy to remember. And whenever we're trying to change our behaviors, and I know this wasn't a question about behavior change, but it's important that we understand what our crutches are and why we are applying them. So again, I mean, I suppose this does link to the mind-body thing, because exercise and our relationship with our body is very psychological, right? It is a felt experience, whether you're in love with your body, right, in a narcissistic or hedonistic way, or whether you are ashamed of your body, right? And you want to change things. And most of us are sadly in that second camp, particularly in the social media generation, right? We look in the mirror and we're like, well, just see all the things that we think are wrong. And we compare ourselves terribly to other people who have completely different lives and lifestyles to us, and quite possibly filtering and airbrushing and photoshopping their photos and all those things, showing the best of themselves in the best possible light. And we take that against ourselves on our worst day, first thing in the morning when you're staring bleary-eyed in the mirror and you why don't I look like Chris Hemsworth? It's all very tragic, right?
I looked like him yesterday, but not anymore today.
Sorry, say again.
I looked like him yesterday, but not anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, all of a sudden now it's gone totally. What's going on there? There's no justice in the world. So it is, a psychological relationship. And again, if we need to make changes to ourselves, to our lives, whatever that is, whether it's a change in a relationship that we're having, whether it's changing job, whether it's doing more exercise, maybe it's doing less exercise, right? If you could be exercise addicted and you might actually be doing yourself harm because you found, your crutch is filling a need in your life, but again, it's not being healthy because you're taking it to extremes. It's understanding the meaning behind those behaviors, those activities. What need is that relationship filling for you? What need is that behavior filling for you? And this is something that Tony Robbins talks about a lot in his talks. It's the we all have these human needs, and it's certainty and variety, love and connection, giving back. What are the other two? This always happens. Suddenly pops in my head. They'll come back to me anyway. I think the 6 human needs, but certainty often fits in there. Significance is one of them, right? We all need to feel special, so we all need a sense of certainty. So we need to know where we are every day. We need to have know that we have some degree of shelter, that we have some relationships that we can rely on, that we have food, that sort of stuff. And it kind of ties into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that sort of thing that's become a pyramid of behaviors. We also need variety in life, right? If we have too much certainty, then it stagnates, it constricts us, and it makes us miserable, can cause all sorts of problems. We need to feel significant in some way, right? We need to feel special, and that can be just as toxic, because we can feel special by being the worst at something, right? The most badly behaved, the most helpless, the most hopeless. So that was significance. Contribution. We need to feel that we're giving something back to the world around us, right? Or to society at large. And growth. We need to be sort of in a position where we can learn, where we can develop, where we have some opportunity to expand the world we're in. And finally, it's love and connection. And that's about, having a connection with something. And that can be love and connection with yourself, and it can be a healthy relationship. It can be love and connection with another. It can be an animal. It can be a love and connection with a sports team or nature. And one of the things that is interesting that he says actually is that most of us settle for connection because we're too afraid to risk love, because love requires vulnerability, and that's a very interesting point. So most of us connect with something, but we don't give ourselves over to the vulnerability required to love. So those are, in a ham-fisted way, the 6 human needs that Tony Robbins talks about, and as I say, very, very closely associated with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But yeah, you can't separate mind and body, and it just doesn't work practically. And if you look at any aspect of your life where it's working or not working, you'll find that's true.
Mostly, yes. We'll come back to the question too.
Circle back to the question. We get it.
Because I think the reason I asked you about the mind and body connection, I think was also because I wanted to sort of bring in that aspect that we cannot be only exercising and not paying attention to our thoughts and our and the way we look at the world, our perspective of the world. And I think I think what you said was a great entry into that, and we can go ahead and build on it. my question then would be, why should we pick up mindfulness in our lives? I mean, what does that give us in addition to our exercising capability, that we're skillful, that we remember so many things, that we're so good at our jobs? Why then should we do mindfulness?
Sure. And I think the really simple answer is that it gives you mental space to breathe. And I think that really, for me, certainly that's the critical piece. And that's what I do when I'm working with my clients, or when I'm sort of when I'm working with corporates. It's showing them the space that you get to mentally breathe, and the advantage that that gives you in making decisions about your life, right? And they talk about this in mindfulness. There's the use of the word discerning and discernment. So actually making a deliberate and reasoned choice rather than reacting to something. And when we are not mindful, when we're not skilled with our thoughts and our mind, we get just lost to the thoughts. We are overwhelmed by them. We live in this narrative universe in our heads where we're explaining something, second guessing something, judging ourselves, judging other people, all in our minds. It's this complete fabricated sort of movie experience. I mean, fabricated in the sense that you don't know what other people are thinking, but will imagine it. But it's not fabricated in the sense that it actually has an impact on your physiology. You know, it affects your heart rate, it affects your blood pressure, it affects your stress levels, your ability to sleep, and it affects then how you interact with people. If you think people are talking about you in a negative way, whether or not you know that, and you can talk as much as you like about intuition, and I'm not poo-pooing intuition, but you don't know that people are thinking anything about you, right? People are often far busier thinking about themselves than they are about anyone else, by and large, right? We're obsessed with ourselves at the center of our little movie and what people think of us. But that impacts our relationships with them, right? Because we're going to have a very different conversation and a very different sort of tone in our conversation with people. And we're going to have a less honest interaction with them. And we're going to be looking for behaviors that validate our expectations of them, right? Which are our imagined expectations. So we get so lost in this and this has terrible impact on our personal relationships and our professional relationships. And this is the key thing. We've all had bosses that are really difficult to work with, and colleagues that are really difficult to work with, and we've all had relationships that are, you know, from time to time very difficult to work with, right? But you know, guess what? Sometimes we're a bit challenging too, and it's, if we can step back from the noise of our mind, from these comments, from this internal narration for even a few moments, and actually gain a completely different opportunity for perspective. And that then allows you to make a discerning choice on what you do next, rather than reacting with an emotional response.
That is so well put. I think it's also exhausting to be reacting to every thought that shows up. And so I think taking that step back will probably really help us not get stressed about everything that shows up in our mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, sorry, you say it's exhausting, but it is. I mean, it is physiologically exhausting because it's creating stress in the body. The imagined responses are creating stress in the body, creating trauma through the body. It's, you know, it's happening. So yeah, it is exhausting because you're expecting your body to be prepared for a fight or flight response constantly.
Absolutely. And I think, I know that you've trained to be an MBSR teacher, and you've sort of gone through that journey of, you know, how the mind works and how you can sort of bring it to that sense of calm. So what if I had to give you like a couple minutes to talk about your MBSR message, or because I know through Conscious Together and through your own company, I know you're running these courses, that you schedule these, and that, you know, viewers, our listeners can join in from where they do. What are some of the tenets, if we could say, or what are some ideas that you talk about in an MBSR course?
Yeah, I mean, it's building the relationship with mindfulness. So the joy of an MBSR course, or any mindfulness course really, but the joy of these courses is that you're building a new habit together, right? So you have a small group of people who all recognize that they want to make some changes with their mental landscape, because otherwise they probably wouldn't be there. And it's providing simple step-by-step ways to start affecting that in your life and help you build a positive meditation habit. And it starts very gently, like all things do, to sort of gently build you into the process. And there's a variety of meditation styles. And this, again, is something that I find very important, because what you focus on as the object of your meditation, whether it's something internal in the body, whether it's sounds, whether it's an external object, whatever that might be, an image, a candle, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what the focus of the meditation is particularly. But by having a variety of types of meditation, and this is what we do through an MBSR program, it gives you the opportunity to find meditation styles that resonate more readily for you, so that you can stand the best possible chance of developing the skill of mindfulness. And it really is a skill, right? It is absolutely a skill. The more you practice it, the better you get. And I use sports as an analogy, football or something, for example. In the mental health space, people think that they can read about mental health and that will fix things. And they go, oh, I understand that intellectually. But it doesn't work like that. You have to apply it. And this is the trap that so many of us fall into time and time again. And we look for the next buzz thing, the next little gimmicky idea, and we read it, and it might be a really good idea. It might be a really good solution. But we don't actually apply it. And then we end up looking for the next thing. And so back to the sport analogy, you couldn't read a book on football, having never played football before, and expect to play football well, or with any skill whatsoever, or snooker or tennis, or any sport, right? You wouldn't even consider it. But with our minds, we think I can read a book and I get it intellectually, and yeah, I'm now fixed, or I'm now a better person, just from taking in that information. And that's just well, certainly not true with mindfulness, but it's not true with any of the sort of the therapeutic traditions, right? Whether it's, I mean, neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy are a little bit different. They can be a bit more one shot, but they're best applied regularly, in fairness. So even though they're often sold as one-shot solutions, that's actually not often the case. And it's about changing behaviors, about changing lifestyle. It's about practice. You became the you are now by practicing being you for all the days of your life so far. It didn't happen overnight, unless there's been a very specific trauma or incident in your life that has really impacted your personality in some way, and that can happen. But by and large, for most of us, we are the person that we've rehearsed being for all the days of our life. And so making changes is not going to happen like that. You can't just wake up one day and be a different person. You have to practice at it. So again, the advantage of what we do for the mindfulness-based stress reduction course, the 8-week program, is build those habits positively, build those meditative practices, build in the reflections, build in the journaling element of it, to give you the best possible prospects of success.
That is amazing. It sounds like, I think it's always a good idea to start practicing a new habit with a coach or with someone that you sort of feel that you're working together with, that you feel accountable to speak to. And it's probably something that we should talk about more, even on our websites and our channels, and sort of bring the idea out. But also, I mean, in terms of personal experiences, now that you've been conducting these programs, can you share some stories that have really stood out for you? I mean, experiences that have really changed. I mean, how have customers or people enjoyed the benefits of mindfulness? What has that shown to be for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's so rewarding to see people's journey through this, and to see them sort of appear tentatively before you and in front of the group, because there's normally a small group of people, like-minded people, and everyone's there for their own reasons, but often it's anxiety, it's stress, sometimes it's anger, but they tend to be the most common threads that come forward. They're not the only thing, but it's definitely a common factor in what a lot of people seem to be looking for at the moment. And just, watching them transform in 8 short weeks, watching the aha moments where they sort of turn around and say, I thought that was just me. And I love that more than anything else. That's my favorite comment when I'm working with a client or working with a group, when they just sort of look at you dumbfounded and they go, I thought that was just me. All these years I was locked in my head with this little demon, whatever it is, right? And I thought I was the only one who was, unbalanced, who was scared, who was insecure, who didn't have life figured out, right? And actually you just change the world for them when they realize that actually it's such a common human experience. And actually just, we don't talk about these things because we don't like to talk about our insecurities and our fears, because we think it makes us vulnerable, whereas actually, done in the right way, it makes us stronger, and it brings us together with people. And so it's really those sorts of elements that I love the most. I mean, I had one client who came to me for anger issues, and simply doing breath exercise through the meditation completely resolved his anger issues. It was just quite unbelievable how, even for me teaching it, how effective it had been for him. He was just blown away. And this was just through breathing, focusing on the breath. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's so frustrating that this doesn't get the press it deserves, right? Because there's no money in it, right? There's no product to sell apart from learning it as a course, right? There's no ongoing mindfulness protein shake or pre-workout for mindfulness that you can market and make perpetual money out of. Once people have this adopted in their lives and their lifestyle, it's yours for life, right? You can carry it literally, anywhere you need to in the world. It's invisible, it's silent. You can do your mindfulness in the supermarket queue. You can do it whilst you're driving. You can do it in all the situations of life where you need it. But because there's no sort of ongoing business model around it, it's not attractive as a product to gain the publicity it deserves. And I think there is some improvement and headway with this, and things like Wim Hof have sort of broken above the parapet with their breathwork style of things, and he made a BBC documentary recently, which was again good exposure for that sort of this, I say quotes, alternative therapy market. I mean, this is practical, evidence-based, science-supported stuff that works. And it's just, because there's no money in it. It's just nobody talks about it.
And I think, I couldn't agree more with you. And I think from my own experience, having been in the field of mindfulness for a bit, I think people sort of are scared to slow down, because I think if you have to slow down to gain speed for future, I think that sounds like a really paradoxically difficult thing to do. So it must be really hard for people to understand that actually taking those 20 minutes in the morning or the evening could accelerate your productivity and your focus. And that could only be possible if we were constantly talking about mindfulness as a business case at our workplaces. And so if you had a wish for mindfulness to be employed at workplaces, how would you go about doing that, Lorien? If you had a magic wand, what would you be doing?
I think I'd get rid of the stigma that is attached to it. I think, and I'm always conscious when I say this, that mindfulness is taught typically by sort of airy, beardy hippie types. And obviously I sit here with my hairy, beardy hippie look. But I think it has bad press. And I think what happens again is when we're doing meditations, we drop into a certain tone of voice for the meditation. So, we're having a very perfectly normal dynamic conversation here. But as soon as I go into sort of meditation mode, in quotes, right, I obviously change the pitch and the pace of my voice. And there is a reason for that. It's not just to, make it sound melodic. But again, I think this sort of creates this stereotype around it. And that doesn't make it appealing to a lot of people, I think. So I think it's got a bad press or a bad image in terms of how it's delivered. So I think what I need to do is shave my hair, get some tattoos, and
but also if you put some background score and rap your meditation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
see
you post
what
them on TikTok.
see what Eminem can do with it. But so it is trying to find that sort of interesting way. That's a good point. Maybe we'll do that, Avanti. Let's see if we can connect with someone who can help us with that. But yeah, so I think, genuinely, I think, businesses are always looking for productivity hacks, right? And shortcuts and all this sort of stuff. And it's all gimmicky words and things like that. But actually, genuinely, a truly applied mindfulness skill, and again, skill, getting the people to use it, the managers, it has to come from top down in corporate. It always does. So, I think if the managers, if the leaders of the industry and the managers were able to find time to actually do it and actually realize that it works, then I think that would make the difference. And then they'd get the buy-in from the teams. I mean, I don't know if you will remember, I'm sure, that the story about MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, when the guys went from Oxford over to John Kabat-Zinn to pick it up, and they came back and they said it doesn't work. Right, so these university professors, and I've forgotten their names, and I know you'll have them somewhere, but I've forgotten their names. These university professors, very experienced psychologists and psychiatrists, went over, learned from John Kabat-Zinn. They did the whole book thing. They understood it intellectually. They went, "It's really interesting. I see the results you've got. I get it." And he was like, "You need to practice." And they were like, "No, it's fine. We know what we're doing. We're very bright people." They went back and they failed, and they came back to him, whatever it was, a year later or whatever, with their cap in their hands, saying, "What's gone wrong?" And he said, "You've got to practice it." And they did then apply their own mindfulness practice. And then lo and behold, miraculously, they found that they got buy-in and they got the results that they were looking for. And it's because they embodied the activity. And I suppose that's exactly the same thing. I mean, it's delusional, but you see it with our politicians and our leaders, and we do it as parents, right? We tell people to behave in a certain way and we don't do it. And that's one of the fundamental problems, I think, for humanity, is that we're all super good at telling other people how to behave when we can't do it, when we won't do it ourselves. And so, yeah.
And it's a normal thing, because I think it's a blind spot. We can't see our own selves acting the way we do. I mean, we can pass a judgment on others because we can physically see them, but we cannot see ourselves. So it is a natural human tendency. But I think through the tool of mindfulness, we create that space for introspection, and that is what makes us all better as a race, I think. Yeah. In working or at workplace.
Yeah. Definitely. No, definitely. And I think Sam Harris talks about the expression of an examined life. And it is that, it's having that space to step back and see what's going on within yourself and within and around with others, and to have that humility to turn that mirror and look into it.
Takes a lot of humility and courage too. Yeah. Very good. Yes, but thank you so much. I mean, this is wonderful to sort of hear your perspective on it, because my views are similar, but it's nice to be able to hear it from someone like you, because you've been in this field for a while too. So thank you for that. Well, I know we're slightly coming to the end. I mean, we could go on with this for a while now, but I have one final question, I think, for you. But the question then is the connection, the body and mind connection that you've seen, in your work with customers. Give us and the listeners of this podcast, give us some tips. It could be 5 tips that make our lifestyles better and make us more healthier physically and mentally. What would those be on your list?
Sure. I would say breathe more slowly. So most of us are over breathing. Most of us breathe too much. So spend as much time as you can breathing more slowly. That will help you. Again, it's simple, it's invisible. You can do it anywhere. It doesn't look weird. You know, Wim Hof's breath work, the fire breath, is brilliant, but you couldn't do that in a supermarket queue, right? There's just you would have, they'd be calling the police. Maybe, yeah, but no, I'm not encouraging it. So, but breathing slowly, it's completely invisible. You can do it anywhere, and it'll transform how you feel. It'll transform your relationship with your mind. It'll help reduce your blood pressure. It'll help improve your heart health. It'll reduce your stress levels. I mean, it's profound, and you can use that as a focus for your meditation, for your mindfulness as well, right? So there's a double tap success with that sort of approach. You focus on breathing as slowly as possible, and you pay attention to the sensations of the breath as you're doing it. And that will help you be more mindful, and it will help the body calm down and relax. Those things I think are critical for everybody, and they're so easy. It's just insane not to do it. It's just remembering to do it. Do something physical with your body. Don't neglect your strength in particular. We're very cardio focused, and people will go running or cycling if you're into your activity, but we are far too ready to neglect our strength. And this is something I've learned firsthand dealing with the later stages of life that I've done for so long now, is that the stronger your body can be, the more likely you are to live more comfortably for longer, because that's really what it boils down to, right? It's not about how long we live, it's about how well we live. And people are chasing a distant number, but there's no point chasing that distant number if we spend all those years in a chair, not able to stand and not able to care for ourselves. That's a very limiting experience. And I've seen, and I see the grief that causes for the individual concerned and for their loved ones who are around them. So don't neglect your strength. Don't be afraid to pick up weights and learn how to use them properly, and maintain your muscle mass and develop your muscle mass through life. It's super important. So I think those are the key things. I mean, other things, I mean, simply nutrition. I mean, again, the quality of what we eat and how often we eat has a profound effect on our well-being, and should never be neglected, shouldn't be taken for granted. Doesn't mean we have to eat religiously or frugally or whatever, right, with these things, but we should be focusing more on eating quality stuff and slightly less on eating the luxury lovely cakes. I do like a cake. Terrible weakness for cake. And don't neglect your sleep. Again, sleep hygiene, but all these things loop in with each other, right? So if you're not looking after your body and you're not eating well and you're stressed, you're going to struggle to sleep. And if you're struggling to sleep, you're going to struggle to get into shape because your body's going to be stressed. You're going to feel more stressed. These things all loop in on each other. So again, this, I suppose, comes back to the start of the talk, right? It's a holistic model. You can't just neglect your diet to hell, just think you can live on sugary drinks and crisps and nothing else, and think that all other aspects of your life are going to work. It's just inconceivable, right? I mean, there's always an example of someone who manages to pull it off, right? But but for the vast majority of people, that sort of diet is going to cause problems, right?
I think the amount of stress we're living in today is way higher than what our parents did, for example. So
I think it's different. I think we have a very different landscape, and I think that brings its own challenges. I'm reluctant to pass judgment on people before us who I haven't lived through, and had their own challenges and very very real difficulties and things. But I do think we have a very different landscape, and the whole social media thing and the digital connection thing is a very peculiar and particular challenge that we're having to navigate.
That's it. No, and so that's, I mean, thank you so much. I mean, this hour has really flown really, and I think, I know that I'd love to bring you back on some of the topics. I know parenting is one. I know, philosophy and, thinking about those too. But I mean, apart from that, I know a lot of people would like, I have thoroughly enjoyed working with you through Conscious Together. And I can vouch for one that, working with you has really allowed the openness that you bring to any discussion or any forum, I think is very valuable. So if someone who is listening to this podcast wants to reach out to you, Lorien, what is the best way to do it? I mean, tell us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, either through the Conscious Together site and channel, that's absolutely fine. No problem there at all. Or directly with me at lorienholiday.com. So just my name.com. And you can find me on virtually all the social, well, I say virtually all, I shouldn't say that, there's tons of them. On the main social media channels. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn, all under Lorien Holiday. So I don't have a clever pseudonym or anything like that. So if you search for me, you will find me, hopefully.
That is brilliant. And here's wishing you the very best. You're away for the next week, I know, but we'll see you back in Conscious Together Studios after the next week. But thank you so much for the time you've given us. It's absolutely precious.
Thank you, Avanti. It's been lovely talking to you. And yeah, I'll speak to you soon.